What if everything you see in the sky, the stars, the galaxies, time and space, was just a surface layer of a much deeper reality? A reality that no one ever told you about. Imagine for a second, you're looking up at the night sky as you've done so many times before, but this time something isn't right. There's a distortion, as if the very fabric of the universe is twisting. The James Webb Telescope, the most powerful telescope ever created by mankind, detects a pattern. But it shouldn't be there. Not in that position, not at that time, not in that shape. These images don't make sense. These are galaxies that shouldn't exist, structures that defy physics. There is something hidden, or perhaps revealed. Scientists are in shock, and for the first time, they begin to consider a hypothesis that until recently was unthinkable. What if James Webb has just captured real evidence from another universe? What would this mean for you, for humanity, for everything we believe to be true? Now I want to know, and if the discovery of another universe is confirmed, do you believe that humanity is prepared to deal with this truth? Leave your opinion in the comments. I want to know how far your mind is willing to go, because what you'll see in this video might make you rethink your entire existence. Some of the latest evidence suggests that the impossible has already begun to become visible, and the signs are right before our eyes. The James Webb Space Telescope wasn't just designed to replace Hubble. It was built to see further, deeper, and more accurately than any other instrument ever launched into space. Its infrared sensors are capable of observing the oldest lights in the universe, those emitted shortly after the supposed Big Bang. And that's exactly where the problem started. Instead of finding the first rudimentary cosmic structures, astronomers came across galaxies that were large, organized, and too mature to exist at that time. Some of these formations appear less than 300 million years after the beginning of the universe, an interval considered absolutely insufficient for such complex structures to form. The data was initially viewed with skepticism. Maybe calibration errors, maybe artifacts in the sensors, but new observations have confirmed these galaxies are real. They exist, and they are where they shouldn't be. What is being detected not only challenges the cosmic calendar established by modern cosmology, but also questions the models of galactic evolution themselves. How can we explain complete galaxies with already aged stars in a universe that would have barely had time to cool down? Another point of tension involves patterns of energy and light that do not appear to follow normal expansion curves. Certain observed regions exhibit distortions that do not align with the geometry of the known universe. There is a subtle but significant disorganization in the behavior of the background radiation and in its spatial alignments. These anomalies could be noise, or they could be clues to something that exists beyond the observable edge. Some astrophysicists have begun to suggest that what we're re-seeing could be the gravitational influence of external structures, realities that technically don't belong in our observable universe. If this is true, we're not looking at a simple error in the calculations, but rather a loophole that threatens to unravel the standard model of physics. But what is so strange about these galaxies, to the point of making scientists think about another universe? There is a logic behind these anomalies that we have not yet been able to decipher, and perhaps this logic will reveal something much greater than we thought possible. When observations challenge established models, science seeks alternative hypotheses. And among all the possibilities raised to explain the anomalies captured by James Webb, one of the most discussed and controversial is the multiverse theory. As unlikely as it may seem, it has gained increasing support among theoretical physicists and cosmologists who investigate the limits of observable reality. It is not fiction or mystical speculation, but robust mathematical models that emerge naturally from equations of quantum physics and inflationary cosmology. Swedish physicist Max Tegmark has proposed a four-tier classification of multiverses, the most basic of which is a direct consequence of the infinite vastness of space. At this first tier, extremely distant regions of our universe may contain slightly different versions of everything, including copies of you living other lives. The second tier suggests independent cosmic bubbles formed by fluctuations during cosmic inflation. Each bubble would have its own physical laws, separated by barriers that cannot be crossed. This would explain why certain regions of the universe seem to exhibit behaviors that are inconsistent with expected patterns. The third level, explored by Hugh Everett and expanded upon by Brian Greene, is concerned with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He proposes that, with each choice, the universe divides, generating new branches of reality. This would indicate that there would be parallel realities coexisting with ours, where different versions of events unfold simultaneously. And finally, there is the fourth level, a mathematical multiverse, where all logically possible structures exist. This view is more abstract and philosophical, but it gains traction as mathematics proves to be the most solid foundation of modern physics. The existence of multiple universes is no longer treated as just speculation. It arises as a mathematical and logical necessity in several advanced fields of physics. And if James Webb's data really is pointing to distortions that don't belong in our universe, then perhaps we're already inside one of those bubbles without knowing it. There is an invisible link between these ideas and an even more widespread phenomenon. But what if these realities were closer than we imagine? Now tell me, if there are other universes with different versions of you living in other realities, would you like to know what your life would be like there? Or would you prefer not to know? Write in the comments, do you believe the multiverse is real? Or is this beyond the bounds of what we should try to understand? Your opinion could be the beginning of a debate that goes far beyond science. But what if these possibilities aren't just out there in distant dimensions? What if they are being reflected here, now, in who we are, without us realizing it? Think for a moment. What if, at this very moment, there was another version of you living a completely different life? Not just similar, but with different decisions, opposite choices and circumstances that followed paths that you, here, never took. This idea is not only provocative, it is directly linked to one of the most discussed models among multiverse theorists. The concept of branching realities proposed by Hugh Everett suggests that every time a decision is made, the universe unfolds into new possibilities, creating parallel lines of existence. Imagine you who decided to change cities, another who turned down a job offer, one who has never met certain people, or even one that is no longer alive. Every small action could have triggered a completely new path, and these versions, although inaccessible to us, would continue to develop independently. This raises questions that go beyond physics. Who are you really, if there are countless versions of you coexisting in other realities? Is your identity one, or does it spread across countless possibilities? How much of yourself is tied to your choices, and how much is just a reflection of a random scenario? These questions aren't just philosophical curiosities. They touch on what underpins our sense of purpose, control, and meaning. If every possible version of you exists somewhere, does that reinforce the importance of who you are here, or does it lessen the weight of your decisions? The existence of other yous can be a relief or a source of anguish. After all, are you unique or just one of many variations? What if, right now, another version of you was hearing those same words and feeling something completely different? What would this reveal about the nature of consciousness? But what if the discovery of another universe were confirmed tomorrow? What would that do to humanity, to our culture, our beliefs, our sense of control? The reaction could be much more unpredictable than most people imagine. The simple hypothesis of a parallel universe already challenges our understanding of reality. But if the existence of another universe were officially confirmed, the effects on society would not just be scientific, they would be profoundly human. The psychological structure that supports our way of living would be confronted by something that breaks with what we call certainty. Religions based on absolute truths would see their doctrines threatened. Some might reinterpret the discovery as part of a divine narrative. Others would reject it as a modern heresy. Theological chaos would be inevitable. Philosophically, concepts such as soul, destiny, and free will would have to be rethought. If there are other versions of us in other realities, what makes us unique? Where does faith end and the fear of losing control over what we call existence begin? For most people, the revelation of other universes would provoke extreme reactions. Fascination for some, despair for others. Many would feel small, irrelevant, or even betrayed by the idea that everything they learned about reality was incomplete. The emotional impact could be compared to an existential collapse. Who are we? Where are we? And what really matters? Governments and large institutions were unlikely to allow this information to circulate freely in the beginning. Confirmation of another universe would change the entire global geopolitics. The race would no longer be for oil or technology, but for control of the narrative. The media would be pressured, the information manipulated. Some leaders would try to use the discovery to strengthen their speeches. Others would silence scientists. Doubt would spread faster than the truth. Humanity does not fear the unknown, just out of ignorance, but because it destroys the structures that keep us stable. The revelation that our universe is not the only one would be the breaking point for everything we have been taught to accept as real. What if people started acting unpredictably in the face of this new reality? There is a social consequence that almost no one is discussing, but which may be the most dangerous of all. If you value content that challenges common logic, expands the mind, and questions everything we take for granted, click the like button now. This simple action shows that there is room here to explore the unknown with seriousness and depth. Plus, it helps YouTube understand that you are part of a community that doesn't settle for easy answers and wants more. But there is a little discussed side effect of this discovery. And it is not related to science, but to the collective behavior that can emerge when the sense of reality begins to unravel. Modern science is built on a foundation of observable, repeatable, and logical principles. But what happens when a discovery puts the structure that supports that building at risk? Confirmation of another universe would not just be new data, it would be a rupture. Fundamental theories would need to be re-evaluated. Previously solid equations would now have exceptions. Models that have worked for centuries may become limited versions of a broader truth, not due to error, but due to incompleteness. The first reaction within the scientific community would be resistance. Great advances almost always face initial opposition. When Galileo stated that the Earth revolved around the Sun, he faced institutions that refused to accept the change. When Einstein proposed that time and space were relative, he faced skepticism from those who believed in absolute truths. History shows that knowledge evolves, but not without crises. Universities and research centers would have to rethink their entire curricula. Professors who taught traditional cosmology would find themselves faced with students questioning the limits of the universe. Subjects such as theoretical physics, philosophy of science, and epistemology would gain new importance. There would be intense debates, divisions between schools of thought, and a natural movement toward adaptation or rupture. The generation that grew up with fixed models would have to learn to live with uncertainty as the rule, not the exception. But instead of collapsing, knowledge can expand. The very concept of science would undergo a transformation. Accepting the existence of other realities would not mean abandoning the scientific method, but recognizing it as part of something larger, a process that, throughout history, has already shown itself capable of absorbing the impossible. Real progress doesn't happen when everything is right, but when something forces us to change the way we think. Perhaps we are at the beginning of a new era, where the question is no longer, how does the universe work? But what universe are we trying to understand? But if there is another universe, is it possible to reach it? Just wait until you see what some theories say about this. The idea of crossing into another universe seems at first glance to belong only to science fiction. But some of the most advanced theories in modern physics have begun to treat this possibility with a more technical than imaginative eye. And among the most debated proposals is that of so-called wormholes, hypothetical shortcuts in space-time that would connect two distant points, or perhaps two distinct realities. These structures arise naturally in the equations of general relativity, but for them to be usable, they would require a condition that still challenges our technological capacity: the manipulation of negative energy. Negative energy is a theoretical concept, but with mathematical support. It appears in quantum phenomena such as the Casimir effect, and would, in theory, be capable of keeping a wormhole stable enough to allow passage. The problem is that until now, there is no viable way to generate or control this type of energy on a macroscopic scale. Another proposal comes from superstring theory, which describes the universe as made not of point particles, but of tiny vibrating strings in multiple dimensions. This theory admits the existence of parallel realities separated by dimensional scales invisible to our eyes. The challenge would be to find a way to interact with these additional dimensions. This would require technologies so advanced that to us they seem indistinguishable from magic. Scientists such as Michio Kaku and Kip Thorne have already seriously discussed the possibility of using space-time engineering as a means of access between universes. The biggest obstacle, however, is not just physics, but the absence of direct evidence. Without proof, these ideas remain mathematical hypotheses, but that doesn't make them irrelevant. In science, the absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. The question is not just whether it is possible, but whether we should try, because accessing another reality would not only mean going beyond the known universe, it would also mean entering a region where the rules may be completely different. What if these rules are incompatible with life as we know it? There is an ethical and philosophical dilemma in this quest that few are willing to face. But now tell me, what crazy, mysterious, or impossible theory about the universe has ever crossed your mind? Write here in the comments, because the most intriguing ideas can become videos here. This channel is made for those who think beyond the obvious. So share your hypothesis, no matter how strange it may seem. Sometimes, what seems absurd is just what has not yet been understood. Science advances based on questions, but some answers may be too big for us to absorb without consequences. Confirmation of another universe would not only be a scientific revolution, it would profoundly shake up our notion of reality. And the first question that arises is, should we really know this? There are those who argue that the search for knowledge should be unrestricted, whatever the cost. Others warn that certain discoveries, once made, cannot be undone. What if knowledge of other realities is capable of destabilizing entire societies? What if, upon understanding that our universe is just one among many, human beings lose their sense of purpose? What's the point of searching for meaning if our every decision is just one of infinite parallel possibilities? Such a discovery would call into question concepts such as truth, authenticity, and meaning. If there are other selves living different lives, what makes this version legitimate? What if this reality is just a simulation within something even bigger? The simulation hypothesis, championed by the likes of Nick Bostrom, proposes that advanced civilizations can create digital universes indistinguishable from the real one. If this is the case, the discovery of other universes could be just a miscalculation within a more complex system, or a deliberate glitch left to be found. This raises an ethical dilemma. Are we ready to deal with the possibility that nothing is unique, definitive, or stable? Science can find the formulas, but the human mind needs to find a new emotional balance to deal with the fragmentation of reality. The revelation of another universe would force us to review not only physics, but also consciousness. The way we define what is real would never be the same. Millennial philosophies would become insufficient. Issues that seemed resolved would return with more weight. And given this, many could simply shut down, to deny, reject. But even if we can never cross over to another universe, just knowing it exists changes everything. Amid complex calculations, profound observations and theories that challenge our imagination, an inevitable question emerges. What does it all say about us? The real possibility that our universe is just one of many need not diminish us. On the contrary, it can make us more aware of our position, our limitations, and paradoxically, our value. The history of human thought has always oscillated between arrogance and humility. We once placed ourselves at the center of the universe. Then we accepted that we revolve around the sun. Later, we understood that we are part of a galaxy among billions. And now, perhaps, we are ready to understand that our entire universe is just one piece in a larger system. This cycle of discoveries does not nullify us. It educates us. Science is the tool. But what drives this search is something older: human restlessness. We do not seek other universes out of vanity, but because there is something in us that refuses to accept the apparent limits of reality. There is a silent urgency to understand, and in this urgency, we rediscover our humanity. Because the more we look outside, the more we realize how much we still ignore about ourselves. Paradoxically, the notion of multiverse can connect us more with the present. If there are other realities where other versions of us are experiencing other possibilities, this reinforces the value of what we have here. The uniqueness of this existence, the chance to make conscious choices, the importance of being aware of what is in front of our eyes. It's not just about looking for portals or uncovering hidden formulas. It's about understanding that while we speculate about other worlds, we are still learning to deal with this one. Perhaps this is the true lesson, that in the face of vastness, uncertainty, and the unknown, the most powerful act of intelligence is to continue searching. If you've made it this far, it's because you're part of that rare group that isn't satisfied with the obvious. So share this video now with someone who also questions the limits of reality. There are conversations that cannot be restricted, and this is one of them. Let's spread this powerful doubt to those who still believe that there is only one universe. Maybe after all, the universe is telling us something bigger than any formula. Maybe he's just inviting us to look beyond visible reality. Because faced with so many questions, an uncomfortable doubt arises. What if everything we believe about existence is just a limited version of what is really out there? The James Webb Telescope isn't just showing us images, it's challenging us. It's testing what we call reality. It's opening doors that may never be closed again. But what about you? Are you ready to accept that everything can change? And if James Webb really confirmed another universe, do you think we should know the truth, or would that be too dangerous? Share this video with someone who needs to reflect on this. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you knew that everything we experienced might not be the definitive reality? Now, if you feel you need to go further, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Being part of this is more than just watching videos. It is being on a journey through theories, discoveries, and questions that science has yet to answer. Here, every idea opens a new path, and what's coming next could change everything you think about time, space, and existence itself. Click on the video that is appearing on your screen now, because the next question is perhaps even more disturbing than anything we've talked about so far. And the most disturbing thing is that it may have already started to become reality.